Good evening and welcome. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana, 104.5 FM. My name is Mr. Garza. I will be your host for this evening, and I am here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Views expressed are those of the speakers and are not intended to represent WRFU, UCIMC, Urbana Socialist Forum, or UPTV, as we say on the televised version of this show. Whose views are these? Well, they're mine, my views, me, myself, and I, since I'm here by myself, and or they are the views that are embodied in the various stories that I read in hopes of giving you information, and sometimes in sharing views, and sometimes in showing views that I vehemently disagree with, and everything in between. So there are various views floating around in the midst of this show. That's, for the TV viewers, this is my hand gesture that expresses floating around. For the radio viewer, you won't have seen that, but you can probably guess what it looked like. Or you can go to UPTV and watch it live. Well, not live, but delayed. Friday evenings, I think. Anyway, be that as it may. Views, yes, mine, sometimes authors of stories, but not whosever views they are not necessarily those of WRFU, UCIMC, Urbana Socialist Forum, or UPTV. They may be those entities' views as well, but you won't know unless you ask them, and they do not automatically sign on to my program and say, we share your views. You express our views through your words. They don't say that. Why do I always talk about the disclaimer so much? Well, because I'm one of those people, as someone in my life used to comment, I like to analyze everything till it barely exists, I think is how she put it. No, I like to just look at things and think of what they really mean and what they really stand for. And, it's easy to make statements, just blanket statements about things without thinking of all the different variables that are involved. I like to consider all the variables because I think they're important, if you know what I mean. So, views, immigration, show, Monday night, hot day, not as bad as it could have been. Certainly not as bad as a couple of days there, but still kind of hot. Stuff going on all around the world, as usual. Right now, our person who has claimed the label of commander-in-chief is busy whining about football players who are demonstrating against police brutality. That's what our government is up to at the moment, in case you're wondering. But there are other politicians who are doing other things. Like, for example, Susan Collins just came out as the third no vote on the Graham Cassidy bill, which, in case you're wondering, is the fourth, fifth, I don't know how many, attempt to repeal the ACA. So it looks like, unless they manage to come up with something completely different or kill the filibuster or who knows what, that one is dead too. There are lots of dead carcasses of ACA repeal bills out there. And this one, frankly, deserved to die a slow, miserable death with the best of them, because the best of them were still really bad. They haven't had a good one. Anyway, that kind of thing is going on right now. What? Oh, okay. Sorry. I was distracted for a moment. I am not anymore. So the last few shows we were talking about DACA, as you will remember. So apparently, interestingly, a couple of GOP senators introduced a bill to give some DACA recipients a path to citizenship, which was a bit of a surprise because I know that there was a bipartisan effort to come up with like a new version of the Dream Act. Well, this is not the same thing. I'll read a quick. I've got a couple stories here about this, so here's one of them. Senators Tom Tillis and James Lankford, both Republicans, are expected to introduce a bill Monday that would provide a path to citizenship for some undocumented immigrants covered by the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, recently nixed by the Trump administration. The bill would require, and get this, in quotes, extreme vetting. A vague term often used by President Donald Trump for those young undocumented immigrants seeking a path to citizenship. Former DACA recipients would have to go through several rounds of background and security checks, as well as pass a medical exam, according to talking points on the bill obtained by McClatchy. The bill's authors are expected to pitch the bill as a compromise between amnesty and mass deportation, arguing that a merit-based system would allow certain young undocumented immigrants to stay in the country while still keeping out anyone with a criminal history. The forthcoming legislation would not let undocumented immigrants who hold a green card apply to bring family members over to the U.S. as permanent residents, as green card holders are able to do under current law. Under the bill, recipients would have to wait until they are citizens to petition for family members to join them in the U.S. Only those who have been in the U.S. since June 15, 2012, when the DACA program started, would be allowed to apply for legal status under the bill. Applicants would also need a high school diploma to apply, and they would need to either attend college, serve in the military, or hold a steady job in order to maintain legal status. So that's the mild way of describing it. That's a very kind of hands-off, I'm no judging here kind of way of describing this. Here's another way of describing this. So, entitled, Republicans' New Immigration Bill is so ridiculous that it could take 15 years to become a citizen. So then we get into a little more into the meat of this idea. So this reads, 3 Republican senators have introduced an immigration bill that grants a 15-year pathway to citizenship for some undocumented immigrants brought to the country as children. It also prevents those immigrants from sponsoring their family members for legislation. Oh, for legalization, excuse me. I'm trying to read and think at the same time. Under the Solution for Undocumented Children Through Careers, Employment, Education, and Defending Our Nation Act, or called Succeed, co-authored by Republican Senators James Lankford, Tom Tillis, and Orrin Hatch, undocumented immigrants would be allowed to get an eventual pathway to citizenship if they fulfill several years of criteria. For its most basic qualification, applicants must have arrived in the country before the age of 16 and before June 15, 2012. These are kids who literally do not have a home anywhere, Lankford said during the press conference announcing the bill on Monday. So that statement sounds pretty sympathetic. But that June 2012 date is significant because it marks the start of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals initiative, an Obama-era executive action that granted temporary deportation relief and work authorization in 2-year increments. On September 5th, Donald Trump pulled the plug on DACA, calling on Congress to find a permanent fix for these beneficiaries so that they can legally remain in the country. Under the White House's rescission announcement, more than 150,000 people whose employment authorization cards expire before March 5, 2018 must renew their current status one last time by October 5, 2017. The Succeed Act would require applicants to be consistently employed 48 out of 60 months, earn a college degree, or serve in the military while working their way into a conditional permanent resident status. That status would be renewed after 5 years, during which time they can apply for a formal green card. After that, they can apply to become U.S. citizens, which would take another 5 years. In total, it would take applicants 15 years to become a citizen. The proposal would prevent immigrants from chain migration, a pejorative term to describe immigrants who are able to sponsor family members to legally stay in the United States. The bill is a far more restrictive version of the DREAM Act, a federal bill annually introduced since 2001 by Senators Dick Durbin and Lindsey Graham that would grant a pathway to citizenship in a fewer number of years. In a scenario where the Succeed Act passes as federal law, that would mean that DACA recipients whose average age is currently 25 years old would be 40 years old by the time they become Americans with full rights. There are various avenues to become a citizen in this country, but it generally takes legal immigrants anywhere between 3 and 5 years to undergo the citizenship process. The Succeed Act has President Donald Trump's approval, Langford said, insisting that the bill can't be a standalone, meaning that the bill would have to be part of a larger immigration reform package. Tillis added that there should be no border security components to the plan. The president was very outspoken. Tillis added that there should be border security components to that plan. Of course. The president was very outspoken, Langford said at a press conference, indicating that the president hadn't seen the text of the Succeed Act, but felt that the principles of the bill were aligned with exactly the kind of solution that would work. Tillis explained that including a 15-year citizenship provision was in part intentional because this goes to the prevention component of potentially having more people cross the border to apply for citizenship. He also criticized the DREAM Act because it had failed every single time. Langford indicated that the Succeed Act is a compassionate bill and said that these individuals are currently a part of our economy and that it hurts us to put those individuals out of the economy. Although the Republican senators framed the bill on the principles of compassion, prevention, merit, and fairness, immigrant advocates were horrified by the bill's restrictions. Quote, "The Succeed Act introduced today is more of the same, another bill brought forward by Republicans that continues to criminalize immigrant communities." Kika Matos, spokesperson for the Fair Immigration Reform Movement, said in a statement, "The bill calls for extreme vetting of immigrants and restricts family reunification and legal migration. We've seen this all before, and we're not going to stand for it. We demand that a clean DREAM Act is brought to the floor for a vote." It excludes the oldest dreamers, those who have lived here the longest, from the program entirely. Frank Sherry, executive director of the Immigrant Rights America's Voice Education Fund, said in a statement, "It makes it difficult for dreamers to sponsor their loved ones under the legal immigration system, and it requires dreamers to sign away future legal rights by forcing them to sign a voluntary deportation order subjecting them to automatic removal if they violate certain terms of their status." So we're starting to get a better picture of what this thing is. But you don't have to really understand very much or many of the details once you hear the term extreme vetting being applied in this instance, because they're talking about DACA recipients. So DACA recipients, I don't know if you realize how much paperwork these people have to go through, how much checking and vetting and double checking and everything that is done to ascertain whether they are worthy of being made into citizens or being allowed, in the case of DACA, just to stay here and work in a semi-safe way so that they can feel, comfortable getting up every day and not thinking, oh, is today the day that I'm going to be deported to some country that, I hardly even know. So extreme vetting implies that there is a reason to suspect that there's something dangerous or shady or potentially awful about these people, or as the, what was this? Where is it? The spokesperson for FIRM, Fair Immigration Reform Movement, said that it continues to criminalize immigrant communities, and that's exactly what it does. It's basically taking a program that has already gone on record as being, this is for the best of the best of the best, the most deserving, the worthiest of the worthiest of the worthy. That's already kind of divided people into groups of, well, you're not really worth it because you haven't really suffered enough, or you're really not, your story isn't pathetic enough to make you worthy of this program. But you people here, you're good enough for us to consider maybe just sort of letting you stay here and work for a while. And we'll promise not to cross our fingers behind our back when we promise to say that we won't deport you while you're here working. I mean, that's what the DACA program already is. It already separates people out and kind of defines them as the bare minimum kind of person that we will allow to just sort of, infest our landscape has to be the best of the best. That's what DACA already is. And these guys are saying, oh, but, in order for them to take the holy path to citizenship, we're going to extreme vet them. This group that's already been extremely vetted already, to winnow out all those, slackers and drug dealers and other people that are, clearly sprinkled among the deserving DACA members. I mean, it's just crap. It's complete crap. And it's insulting to such a degree that I don't even know how to respond to it. I mean, I'm glad on the one hand that these are Republicans who are actually coming out like, let's try to do something about this. That's good. I applaud that. What they've come up with, at least from the sound of it, I haven't seen all of it yet, but from what little we've seen, what they've come up with is fairly awful. Not absolutely, 100% this is trash awful, but pretty close. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on about it, but okay, here's another take from the Sacramento Bee. I've always loved the name of that paper and their little logo. There's a bee. It looks like a honeybee carrying a newspaper or something. I don't know. Anyway, let's see if they have any more tidbits for us. This is entitled, GOP Bill Will Offer Dreamers Citizenship After Extreme Vetting. There's that term again. So it says Senator Tom Tillis will introduce his conservative Dream Act on Monday that would provide a pathway to citizenship for as many as 2.5 million young undocumented immigrants, but one that is long and involves extreme vetting. The North Carolina Republican and co-sponsor James Lankford, an Oklahoma Republican, will pitch the plan as merit-based relief that must be earned and critically not amnesty, according to Republican talking points obtained by McClatchy. Merit-based relief that must be earned. Okay. But unlike other merit-based immigration proposals that limit new immigrants from entering the country based on their job skills, this proposal would limit who can remain in the country based on their years of American education, work experience, or military service. Choosing between either mass deportation of dreamers or blanket amnesty is a false choice, the lawmakers argue, according to the talking points. There is a third option, an organized process by which talented and hardworking young Americans can earn legal status. All applicants will have to pass a medical examination. What is this medical examination? What did it? Are they? I don't. I don't know. I'm picturing when I read that. I'm picturing the old Ellis Island where it's like, are these people insane? Or do they have syphilis, or are they weak-minded? Or I don't know. I mean, whatever they were looking for back in those days, are they going to have to be sprayed with DDT to delouse them? Or I mean, what does that even mean? A medical examination. They can't get health care, according to Republicans, because they don't deserve it, because they don't have enough money, or whatever the criteria Republicans have for who deserves health care. But they have to get a medical examination in order to become citizens, maybe because, we only accept healthy people here in this country? When was the last time you went to the county fair or something and walked around? I mean, clearly don't have to be too healthy to be an American. Anyway, so all applicants will have to pass a medical examination and be extreme vetted. The vetting will include 3 separate rounds of security and background checks to ensure they have no criminal history and pose no national security threat. 3 separate rounds of security and background checks. You know how many rounds of security and background checks I've had to undergo? Why, that would be none, ever in my life, for any reason. And yet I'm allowed to walk the streets, have my own radio show, all sorts of things. And apparently the only difference is that I was born here, so I am magically A-OK as far as whatever these things are concerned, these powers that be are concerned. But because these people were technically not born here, I guess, even though they grew up here, just like I did, they have to undergo 3 separate rounds of security and background checks. Wow. The first check would happen when the immigrant enters the program, followed by a second check after 5 years, just to make sure they're still on the straight and narrow. And the third check comes after 15 years, if and when the immigrant applies to become a citizen. 15 years. And then you have to have security and a background check. Wow. Not criminalizing these people too much, are you? The bill differs from previous iterations of the so-called Dream Act, which failed to pass a Democratic-controlled Senate in 2010. The Tillis-Langford bill has a longer time frame and has more expansive list of disqualifying crimes. For example, I'm sorry. I thought they were going to give us an example. They just say, for example. A longer list, for example. There needs to be a fresh new examination of what a Dream Act should look like, specifically from a conservative angle. This is a new, unique attempt, said Matthew LaCourte, immigration policy analyst at Nicholson Center, a libertarian research group which has been working with Tillis on the legislation. Going back to the same stale, tired Dream Act didn't seem like it was something to go back to on the policy side or the political side. Oh, that same stale, tired Dream Act. Wow. Republicans see the Tillis plan as the best chance yet to protect young undocumented immigrants who will soon be facing deportation after Trump ordered the end of the Obama-era Deferred Action Program, known as DACA, that allowed some 800,000 young immigrants brought here illegally by their parents to have work permits. Trump gave Congress 6 months to come up with a solution before the DACA protections are phased out next year. But he also said he wants Congress to deliver a large immigration package that includes not only a fix for Dreamers, but funding for a border wall. Oh, good. Yes, of course. Got to have that wall. That's why immigration advocates are already skeptical of the Tillis-Langford proposal. Indeed, the legislation is unlikely to be brought to the floor as a standalone measure because the GOP authors want to use it to draw Democrats to the table to discuss border security measures. Simply, Congress cannot pass any border security package without finding a way to entice a small group of Democrats to join the bill, the authors argue, based on the talking points. The proposal has received support from influential leaders in the business community who see the measure as the best opportunity to protect Dreamers who will soon be in line for deportation. We want the Dream Act, but our view of this debate in general is we want to help immigrants and help the economy and help Americans. said Jeremy Robbins, executive director of the Partnership for a New American Economy. So we're pragmatic. Right now, we want 800,000 or more dreamers who are in jeopardy. We want to protect them. Yes, and extremely vet them as well, and a medical test. The Nicholson Center touts the potential economic benefits. It estimates that eligible recipients would help create 115,000 new jobs and contribute $200 billion to federal, state, and local governments. This is good economics and good policy making, the court said, noting that it would tell dreamers, many of whom were educated in American schools, that it's time to fully invest in you as a member of our economy and our society. The economic evidence is overwhelming that this would be great for the American people. The Tillis-Langford plan would be a companion proposal to a House bill introduced by Miami Republican Carlos Curbelo. Like Curbelo's bill, the Tillis plan would offer an eventual path to U.S. citizenship for immigrants who entered illegally before January 1st, 2012, and were 16 years old or younger. The proposal would grant high school graduates without a serious criminal record conditional immigration status for a 5-year period. During that time, if they earn a higher education degree, serve in the military, or stay employed, they could apply for permanent residency and eventually citizenship. So that's a few more details about this plan. Doesn't look like... Anyway, I thought I would read, while I'm here, I thought I would read something that I ran across called What It's Like to Be Documented. In case you're wondering, who are these DACA people? What are they all about? What's their thing? I mean, you should know by now if you listen to the show, but this is kind of an interesting thing, so here it goes. This is from theweek.com. The pickup truck bounced along the road, moving swiftly towards its final destination, the U.S.-Mexico border. Tucked away inside, 3-year-old Diana Rodriguez, her 6-year-old brother, and their mother were silent, with only the occasional hiss of "be quiet" in Spanish breaking through the stillness when young Rodriguez dared stir. My mother got the sense that we didn't know what was going on, but that something was going on, Rodriguez said. She was so young, after all, when they slipped undetected into the United States, then continued on from Arizona to Chicago, where their father, who had left Jalisco a year earlier to find work in the metropolis, was waiting. There wasn't much for the Rodriguez family in the mountainous region of Jalisco. Work was scarce, and it just wasn't sustainable for a family of 4. When word came tumbling down from up north that there were plenty of job opportunities in construction, at restaurants, as a janitor, in Chicago, Rodriguez's father decided to make the trek. He was welcomed by family already living there, and soon Rodriguez and her mother and brother joined him. I never thought about where I was born versus where I grew up. Rodriguez, now a junior at Pomona College studying economics, philosophy, and politics, told The Week. I knew I was Mexican, but I didn't think much about it. My parents started making comments about my status, though, saying things like, "You're so smart, if only you had papers," and "You can't really do anything because you don't have papers." I didn't understand what they meant.